President Akufo-Addo has signed an executive instrument to declassify portions of the Achimota Forest as no longer a forest reserve. The EI 144, gazetted on April 19, 2022, indicates that the area ceases to be recognized as a forest reserve from May 1, 2022. A copy of the document, which has gone viral on social media, said the president is satisfied that the land specified is no longer required as a forest reserve and has indicated that the ecological integrity of an adjoining forest reserve should be protected. The Lands and Natural Resources Minister Samuel Abdullah Ajinapo explained the executive instrument.
Now, the government is not shooting itself in the foot because the government has not compromised the Achimota Forest in any way. And as I've been explaining, what has been done is the portions of land which is not being used as a forest reserve. As I sought to explain, it's like Kolebu Teaching Hospital. The EI which acquired Kolebu Teaching Hospital runs into several communities which have been developed today. So if the pre-acquisition owners were to come forward tomorrow to say the purpose for which the land was acquired in the colonial times is not being used for that purpose, you acquired it for a hospital, but now several parts of it have become communities. The land has been encroached upon. So those parts which have not been used as a hospital amend the EI which acquired the land and have it reverted to us. You will not be compromising Kolebu Teaching Hospital. So will it be if it was University of Ghana. And so it is in the case of Achimota Forest. We have not amended the EI to give away the Achimota Forest. We've amended the EI to give away the portions of the land which was acquired in 1927, which is not being used for a forest reserve. And in actual fact, that act was done as far back as 2013.
Samuel Ajinapo debunked allegations that the government has sold 361 acres of the forest to private developers.
Following the publication of the Forest Cessation of Forest Reserve Instrument 2022, EI 144, there have been reports circulating in sections of the public that the Achimota Forest Reserve, as currently constituted, has been sold and is set to be earmarked and redeveloped into residential enclave. The general public is entreated to disregard these reports as they are false, baseless, and non-factual. Indeed, what the propagators of these messages have refused to add is that EI 144 was published together with the Forest Achimota Firewood Plantation Forest Reserve Amendment Instrument.
The big question you may be asking is why government is taking such a decision. The sector minister, who gave historical background of the custodial ownership of the land, emphasized that it was a well thought through conclusion.
You will recall, and you may be aware, that the Forestry Commission, under the able leadership of Mr. John Alote, the Chief Executive Officer, have been working tirelessly to reforest the Achimota Forest Reserve. For anybody who has been to the Achimota Forest Reserve lately, you will find that the Achimota Forest Reserve is degraded largely, and we're making a lot of efforts at planting trees at the Achimota Forest Reserve. So, with all the strength I can marshal at my disposal, the Achimota Forest Reserve remains intact. What EI 144 does is to make the portions of the land acquired as far back as 1927 for a forest reserve, the portions which have not been used as a forest reserve, the portions which have been encroached upon since the acquisition in 1927, which had already been granted to the Owu family in September 2013, ceased to be a forest reserve and returned to the pre-acquisition owners. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, I think it's important that we set the historical facts in the right perspective, and it will get Ghanaians to appreciate the background to this matter. In 1921, the government of the then Gold Coast, by a certificate of title dated 16 December 1921, made under the Public Lands Ordinance 1877, acquired from the Owu family, the pre-acquisition owners, the parcel of land on which the Achimota School is situated. Subsequent by another certificate of title dated 17 May 1927, the government of Gold Coast, acquired from the same family another tract of land measuring approximately 479 hectares as an extension of the Achimota School. Although compensation was paid for the 1921 acquisition, compensation was not paid for the 1927 acquisition, which is the parcel of land which was acquired to be used as a forest reserve. So for the avoidance of doubt, compensation was paid for the Achimota school to the owners, the Alodia owners of the land, the Owu family, but compensation was not paid for the 1927 acquisition, which was the acquisition made for purposes of a forest reserve.
Samuel Jinapo outlined the future plans for the Achimota Forest and the conditionalities in the latest EI.
Which is that there were two fundamental issues on the table. The first one is the peripheral lands, the lands which had not been used as Achimota Forest. That's what we've dealt with now. Then the second one was what I talked about, which is this company called ICAN. This company called ICAN, which also got some leases under the Mahama administration to transform the Achimota Forest we know, into an ecotourism park. We've still not been satisfied with how that is going to proceed. So those ones we have not given any approval, which is why EI 154 is being promulgated to reaffirm that Achimota Forest remains a forest reserve. Acting on the recommendation of the Forestry Commission. And two, the minister shall not approve any development on the land specified in the schedule unless the minister is satisfied that the development, A, is in accordance with the master plan developed by the District Land Use and Spatial Planning Authority and approved by the minister, and B, does not adversely affect the ecological integrity of an adjoining forest reserve. In other words, even whilst we are granting them this land, which doesn't form part of Achimota Forest properly so-called or currently constituted, we put in this clause just so that the development of this peripheral land does not compromise the Achimota Forest. So we don't wake up one day and we find development in Achimota Forest. That is why we insisted on putting this clause in EI 144. And I'm happy to divulge this. It took a lot of negotiations and a lot of back and forth. But we insisted that this clause 3, paragraph 3, be inserted in EI 144. So EI 154, we went a step further for the avoidance of doubt to reaffirm that the Achimota Forest remains a forest reserve. Ladies and gentlemen of the press, if you take a look at the requests I made of the President of the Republic for an executive instrument, I did indicate in the final paragraph, in order to motivate the discretion of the President to give approval for us to proceed as we've done, I did indicate, and I quote, the ministry intends to develop the forest into an ecotourism park along the likes of Central Park in New York or Hyde Park in London.